3 days. That's how long she hunted him. Not because she was starving, not because she needed to eat. She hunted him because he made the biggest mistake of his life. He attacked her baby, and now he was running through the African bush with a 500-pound mother on his tail, who wanted nothing more than to make him pay with his blood. The Serengeti doesn't care about fair fights. It doesn't care about second chances. It only cares about one thing: survival. And on this particular afternoon, survival meant something very different for a young lion named Simba and the mother rhino who had decided his days were numbered. But to understand why a charging rhino is one of the most terrifying things on the continent, we need to go back to where it all started, when a mother was just trying to keep her baby alive, and one hungry lion thought he had found an easy meal. The water hole at the edge of the Savannah Valley was the lifeblood of the dry season. When the rains don't come, everything with hooves and claws gathers around the last places where water still pools beneath the red earth. It's where predators hunt, where prey comes to drink, and where the lines between life and death blur into something almost invisible. On a morning when the sun hadn't even climbed above the acacia trees, a mother rhino named Zara brought her month-old calf to this exact spot. Zara was massive, nearly 2 tons of solid muscle covered in thick grayish-brown skin that had survived drought, disease, and dangers most animals couldn't even imagine. She had been wandering these grasslands for 14 years, and every scar on her body told a story about why she was still alive when so many others weren't. Her calf, a tiny male she called Kavi, weighed maybe 150 pounds and depended entirely on her for everything: food, protection, navigation, survival. Without his mother, he wouldn't last an hour in this landscape. They arrived at the waterhole just after sunrise. Zara was careful. She was always careful. She approached the water slowly, her ears rotating in every direction, her eyes scanning the surrounding vegetation for the shapes of danger. Kavi stayed close to her rear legs, the safest place in his world. Other animals were there: zebras, wildebeest, and a few buffalo, but they scattered immediately. A rhino at a waterhole is a signal that territory is being claimed, and most animals respected that without needing to be told twice. Zara drank deeply while Kavi watched his mother, learning through observation what safety looked like. The water was cool and clear, and for a brief moment there was peace. The kind of peace that African wildlife only gets in short bursts between threats. Kavi began to drink too, his small muzzle barely reaching the surface of the water, when his mother's entire body went rigid. It was the kind of moment that decides which animals live and which ones become part of the food chain. Zara didn't roar. She didn't announce anything. She simply moved, pushing her calf backward away from the water in one smooth motion driven by instinct refined over millions of years of evolution. The lion came from the tall grass without warning, a young male named Simba, moving with the kind of speed and hunger that only comes when you've been alone in the bush for weeks with little to eat. Simba was powerful, maybe 220 pounds of muscle and teeth, but he was also young, barely in his prime, still making mistakes that older lions learned not to make. He had been tracking Zara and her calf for 3 days, waiting for the exact moment when the mother would be vulnerable or distracted. He thought he'd found it. He thought an easy meal was finally within reach. He was about to discover that hunting a rhino calf when the mother is standing right there is one of the fastest ways to end up dead in Africa. The charge happened so fast that even Zara, prepared as she was, barely had time to react. Simba hit the calf from the side, his teeth finding purchase on Kavi's shoulder, trying to drag the small rhino away from his mother. The pain was instant and severe, a shock to a body that had never known anything but warmth and safety. Kavi screamed, a high-pitched sound of terror that echoed across the savannah like an alarm bell. Zara didn't hesitate. She didn't calculate odds or weigh consequences. She simply became something that very few animals on Earth want to be in the same area as. She became a mother protecting her child. Zara spun with the kind of speed that shouldn't be possible for an animal that size. Her horn, a solid weapon of keratin more than a foot long and sharper than any knife, became her instrument of justice. She caught Simba across the ribs just as he was trying to drag Kavi further from the water. The force of the impact lifted the lion completely off the ground. His body flew through the air like something weightless, rolling twice before crashing into the dirt hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. For a moment, everything went quiet. The birds stopped calling. The insects seemed to pause in their endless buzzing. Even the wind held still, as if nature itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Simba staggered to his feet, blood matting his side fur, his eyes wide with the realization that this hunt had gone very wrong. He looked at the rhino, at the calf now hidden behind her massive body, and he made a decision that would haunt him for the next 72 hours. He ran. Simba bolted back toward the tall grass, toward the cover of the bushes, toward anywhere that wasn't directly in front of a 2,000-pound animal that had just made it clear she was willing to kill him without hesitation. He disappeared into the vegetation, limping slightly on his right rear leg, where the impact had done damage. Zara watched him go but didn't chase. Instead, she turned to her calf, her horn covered in blood, and checked him over carefully. Kavi had been lucky. The lion's teeth had caught mostly muscle and hide, missing the vital organs by inches. It was painful, it was bleeding, but it wasn't fatal. Over the next few days, the wound would get infected, and Kavi would have to be more careful, but he would live. Thanks to his mother's speed and her willingness to fight, he would live. Zara spent the rest of that morning cleaning her calf's wounds with her tongue, a behavior that came from ancient instinct. In the wild, mothers heal their young not with medicine but with attention, with presence, with the knowledge that sometimes just being there makes all the difference. But Simba wasn't done. He was hurt. Yes, he was humiliated, absolutely. But something in that encounter had broken something in him, some part of the young lion's mind that had already been fragile from weeks of hunger and loneliness. As he limped through the bush, bleeding and wounded, a thought kept circling in his brain like a vulture. That rhino had made him look weak. That rhino had made him bleed in front of his own prey. That rhino had proven that she was stronger, faster, and more dangerous than he was. In the lion world, that kind of humiliation doesn't just disappear. It festers, it grows, it becomes an obsession. By that evening, Simba had made a decision. He was going to kill that rhino's calf. Not because he thought he could win a direct confrontation. He'd already learned that lesson. But because he knew something about the African bush that most animals understood but few acted on. If you wait long enough, if you watch carefully enough, opportunities always present themselves. Mothers have to sleep, calves wander, water needs to be drunk. Eventually the perfect moment would come, and when it did, he was going to take it. The hunt began officially at dawn on day 2, though Simba had really been hunting since the moment he ran from that waterhole. He found Zara and Kavi as they moved deeper into the grasslands, away from the water, seeking safer ground. He maintained distance, staying just far enough back that he couldn't be seen but close enough that he could track their scent on the wind. He was patient. Young lions are often impatient, driven by hunger and aggression to attack before they've planned properly. But Simba had learned something from his first failure. Planning mattered. Patience mattered. Timing was everything. Throughout the day, he watched her behavior, learning her patterns. She drank at midday when the sun was highest. She rested in the afternoon when the heat was most intense. She moved at dawn and dusk when hunting was easiest. She was careful, always careful. But even the most careful mother rhino had moments when her attention slipped, when she focused on something other than the danger that was always lurking in the shadows. By late afternoon, Simba had decided on his approach. Instead of attacking directly, he was going to try something different. He was going to make Zara chase him. He was going to let her anger drive her forward, while he led her away from her calf. If he could create enough separation, just 20 or 30 meters between mother and baby, that would be enough. That would be all the time he needed. As the sun began its descent, Simba made his move. He came out of the grass at a gallop, not attacking, not even approaching closely, just running past Zara and her calf at full speed, deliberately running right across her field of vision. The instinct in every mother in the animal kingdom is the same. Chase the threat. Drive it away from your baby. Don't let it escape. Zara charged without thinking, her massive body thundering across the grassland in pursuit of the lion that had attacked her baby that very morning. Simba ran faster, deeper into the acacia scrubland, toward the patches of thick bush where a rhino's size became a disadvantage. For nearly a kilometer, he let her chase him, letting her get close enough that she felt like she was catching him, never letting her get close enough to actually connect. It was exhausting work, pushing his wounded body to its limits, but he knew the end game. Eventually Zara would have to give up. Mother rhinos could run fast, but only for short distances. She was built for power, not endurance. Eventually she would have to stop to catch her breath, to make sure her calf was still safe. And when she did, that's when he would circle back. But what Simba didn't know, what he couldn't have predicted, was that Zara wasn't going to give up as quickly as he thought. The rage of a mother whose baby has been attacked is not a temporary thing. It's a force that overrides everything else. Logic, exhaustion, pain, caution. Zara chased him for nearly 2 kilometers before Simba realized she wasn't slowing down, wasn't tiring, wasn't showing any signs of the weakness he'd been counting on. Her breathing was hard, yes, but her charge was still powerful, still dangerous. Her eyes were locked on him with a focus that had nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with the promise of violence. When Simba finally stopped and turned to run back toward where he'd left the calf, Zara was right behind him. He couldn't lose her. She was staying with him, matching his speed, refusing to let him escape. For the first time in 72 hours, Simba began to understand something that would become his truth over the next 3 days. He had awakened something in this mother that wasn't going to sleep again until one of them was dead. The sun was dropping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that would have been beautiful if they didn't look so much like blood. Simba finally managed to slip into a thick patch of vegetation, a place where his smaller body could maneuver in ways that Zara's massive frame couldn't follow. She stopped at the edge, breathing hard, her entire body trembling with adrenaline and rage. She roared, a sound that carried across the savannah like a declaration of war. She was telling him something. She was telling him that this wasn't over. She was telling him that she owned these lands, and he had no right to be here. Simba heard her from his hiding spot, bleeding from new wounds that had opened up during the chase, and he realized something that changed everything. He had wanted to hunt her calf. He had wanted to prove he was stronger, smarter, more dangerous. But in chasing him across 2 kilometers of open grassland, Zara had sent a very different message. She wasn't just a mother protecting her young. She was a warrior willing to kill something that threatened what she loved, and she had just put her full attention on him. The sun set completely, and darkness claimed the savannah. Simba spent his first night of the hunt in a rocky outcrop, hidden from view, nursing his wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. He had made mistakes before, but nothing like this. Nothing that had resulted in a full-grown rhino deciding he needed to die. In the animal world, that kind of thing didn't usually happen. Usually predators and prey maintained a balance. But Zara had crossed into something else. She had decided this was personal. Dawn of day 2 brought no rest for either animal. Zara found Simba's trail within the first hour of daylight. It was easy to follow. His blood was on the grass. His scent was on the wind. And the tracks of a limping lion heading toward the deeper bush were unmistakable. She had left her calf in a protected area with a thick line of acacia trees, defended on multiple sides, a place where she knew he would be safe. Then she had set out to do something that few rhino mothers ever do: hunt. Simba was running now, not planning, not strategizing, just running because the alternative was standing and fighting something that had already proven she could outpower him. His wounded ribs were on fire with every step. His breathing was becoming difficult. The chase across the grasslands had done more damage than he'd realized. He needed to hunt, needed to eat, needed to gain strength, but he couldn't stop long enough to do any of those things, because every time he stopped, every time he tried to rest, he would catch her scent on the wind. She was always there, always following, always hunting. Throughout the day, the chase intensified. Simba tried to lose her by entering a river, hoping the water would wash away his scent. For 3 hours, he thought it had worked. He rested on a sandbar, his body screaming for sleep, his stomach cramping with hunger. Then he heard it, the sound of water being displaced by a massive body. Zara was in the river, crossing it with the kind of determination that only a mother's rage can provide. She found him on that sandbar and charged, and Simba barely managed to scramble away before her horn connected where his body had been moments before. The second night was even worse than the first. Simba was actively weakening now. Blood loss, exhaustion, lack of food, constant adrenaline, all of it was combining to shut down his body systems. He found shelter in a cave, a rocky outcrop that kept him hidden from view, and he lay there in the darkness listening to Zara's breathing just outside the entrance. She wasn't coming in. Caves were dangerous for rhinos, places where a determined lion could potentially ambush, but she wasn't leaving either. She was waiting. She was willing to wait all night if it meant keeping him trapped. By dawn of the third day, Simba was dying, not metaphorically, but literally approaching the biological limits of what his body could survive. He hadn't eaten in over 36 hours. He had lost enough blood that his movements were becoming sluggish. His breathing was labored. Even his roar, which had once been a weapon of intimidation, came out as something weak and pathetic. Zara was tired too. Her muscles ached. Her own body was running low on reserves. But something inside her, something primal and ancient and completely beyond the reach of logic, kept her moving. This lion had attacked her baby. This lion had drawn blood from her calf. This lion had decided that what belonged to her was available for taking. She was going to teach him the most fundamental lesson the savannah had to teach. Some lines you do not cross. The final confrontation happened at a watering hole near the boundary of her territory. Simba had stumbled there, not because he had planned it, but because his body simply carried him in that direction, out of habit and desperation. Water meant survival. Even a sip of water might give him enough strength to run further, to find shelter, to escape. Zara found him there, and for the third time in 3 days, they came face to face. This time was different. This time Simba didn't run. He was too weak to run. He was too exhausted to do anything but stand there and face what was coming. Zara approached slowly, and there was something almost ritualistic about it, something that seemed to acknowledge that this moment was the culmination of everything that had happened over the previous 72 hours. She didn't charge immediately. She walked to the waterhole herself and drank, her eyes never leaving the lion who had attacked her baby. Then she moved toward him, and this time, when she charged, it wasn't just about running him off. It was about punishment. Simba tried to stand his ground. He roared. He swung at her with his claws. He bit at her hide, but his body simply didn't have the strength anymore. The impact of her horn connected with his shoulder, and he went down. He struggled to get up, but Zara was there, and this time she didn't stop. She gored him once, twice, 3 times, each impact driving him further into the dirt, each charge reducing him further from a predator into something broken and helpless. When she finally stepped back, Simba was bleeding badly. His breathing was shallow. He couldn't stand. He couldn't run. He could barely move. Zara stood over him for a long moment, and then, incredibly, she turned and walked away. She didn't kill him. She didn't finish what the chase had started. She simply left him there, broken and alone, a living monument to what happens when a predator makes a mistake about which prey is protected and which one isn't. Simba lived, barely, bled out and broken and humiliated beyond measure, but alive. He never hunted rhinos again. In fact, he never hunted much of anything again. He became a scavenger, a wanderer on the edges of lion territory, a male that other lions didn't take seriously. He eventually got pushed out of the Serengeti entirely, drifting into new territories where no one knew about the 3-day hunt or what he'd learned about the cost of crossing a mother rhino. Zara returned to her calf, who had waited patiently in his protected spot, unaware of the drama his mother had been engaged in. She checked him over, cleaned his wound and held him close. Kavi grew strong under her protection, eventually becoming a massive bull rhino himself, carrying the knowledge of his mother's fury in his genetic memory. The waterhole where it all started returned to its normal function, just another crossing point in the vast network of survival that defines the African savannah. But the story was already spreading through the bush in the way animal stories do, not through words but through behavior, through memory, through the understanding that some mothers will hunt their enemies until the earth itself runs out of distance. This is what it means to be a mother in a world that wants to take everything from you. This is what it means to fight not for yourself, but for something more important. This is the story of Zara and Simba, a story that reminds us why the most dangerous animal on the African continent isn't the largest predator with the biggest teeth. It's a mother defending what belongs to her, willing to hunt across deserts and through the darkest nights, willing to chase her enemy to the absolute limits of both their survival, because some lines you don't cross, some lessons you don't learn until it's almost too late.